Hi there, thank you for inviting me to make this video for World Tapering Day. My experience with tapering has never been good. When I was 20, I was prescribed an antidepressant that triggered a suicide attempt in me 10 days after starting taking it. And I was really lucky at that time that I had a load of self-belief and motivation. I just wanted to carry on with life. So when I left the hospital 10 days later, because I had some heart complications from the overdose, but when I left the hospital I just threw myself back into life, and I finished my degree, and I did loads of really intensive sports to help ground me in the body and really keep my mental health good, because these were all mental health drugs that I was taking, psychiatric drugs. So for 8 years I was completely medication free, and I was really happy. I worked abroad, I worked in London, I coped with some really high stress situations, I had loads of friends, I was really valued. And then it all really went downhill when I was forcibly prescribed olanzapine. So that happened at the end of 2013. And, you know, just from that moment onwards, the side effects of the drug was so dreadful. Like, I could never get up in the morning. I was in some really abusive relationships. I was really unhappy at work. I was just generally really unhappy. And it took, you know, I was also on Valium for 4 months, and I tapered off that myself. I would say the sensation that I associate with tapering from all the psychiatric drugs is like this feeling of being scooped out from the inside, like kind of having your insides taken out. And I don't know if that is shared by anybody else, and it's so unpleasant that I would always jump into my mind as a way to avoid feeling the feeling. But what I realised was the way to do the taper was that I actually had to have the courage to start going into those suppressed feelings. And I have since learned that, you know, one of the ways that these drugs work is that they attack the central nervous system to prevent a person's experience of all sensation, kind of pleasure and pain. And the antipsychotics, such as olanzapine, are particularly powerful in doing this. So through my taper, I actually had to learn how to regrow a brand new nervous system. And what wasn't ideal was that I couldn't confide in anyone what I was doing, because everyone in my family believes in medicine like a religion, and sort of non-authority with the doctor's requests or preferences is really not that tolerated. So I had to do all of it in secret. I also took a lithium alongside the olanzapine. I started taking the lithium about maybe 6 months after starting on olanzapine, because the side, you know, just the feelings were so horrible. And basically I started to taper off the olanzapine in 2016. I got down from 10 milligrams a day to a third to 3 milligrams a day. So I took the dose down by 2/3 by myself. And at that time I was also taking lithium at a full dose, but I realised with all of the tests, you know, I was having heart monitoring, blood monitoring. I just thought, well, if you're having to test me, like, clearly this isn't actually medicine, like this is something that's toxic to my system, and I didn't want to really take substances that were so toxic to my system. So I made the decision to stop both the lithium and the olanzapine both together. which is not recommended, and it was quite an assault on the senses when the drugs really started to leave my system. I did have to stop work for a couple of weeks. In fact, all of that period of withdrawing, I was basically monitoring myself, and if the side effects were too serious, I would take a dose of olanzapine, take a day off to sleep, and then kind of that would reset my system, and then I'd kind of go back out into the world. And I usually found I could go around 1 to 3 months without needing to take a sort of emergency dose. I guess the good thing about this was that I was really gearing up my my system to really feel these repressed sensations, and you know, respond to what my body was asking for rather than following a system. I know a lot of people like to rely on a system, and I prefer to rely on the intuition and the feeling of my body. That was just what worked for me, even though it's not really standard practice. And I had dreadful insomnia when I eventually did completely stop taking olanzapine. The insomnia was huge. Also gut trouble, and just feeling very lost, not knowing where I belonged. I could no longer get the jobs that I used to rely on for my income. So, and also I've become quite anti-establishment as a result of this, including the medical establishment and the financial establishment. So I also now don't feel as though I belong anywhere where I used to belong in society. I feel very isolated. What I do now is I support other people who are on this journey of decoupling themselves from addictive medications, psychiatric medications, and aligning with their true life purpose and speaking their truth. So this is really rewarding for me, to help encourage other people off the beaten track where I very firmly am now. And if you are on a tapering journey, I really wish you all the best with it. It's not something that I would wish on anyone. Like I say, my symptoms were mostly psychological, like sort of having the sensation of being in two places at the same time, or imaginations of trauma, torture, and you know, various other horrendous things going on in my imagination that then felt very real. So if that's happening to you, you know, you do have my deepest empathy. It's not easy at all, and I am very pleased to say that now, having not taken any psychiatric medication for over 2 years now, it does get easier and it does get better, but having a loving environment around you is absolutely crucial. So I wish you all the best with it, and keep going, and keep remaining in touch with your needs and your body's needs. Thank you.